This is Thomas Howard. I'm one of the ICE technical marketing engineers. We wanted to do this webinar with you all because I think a lot of times we come with a preset agenda and hopefully you're interested in that topic and you can always ask questions about that, but we may not have covered your specific topic of interest or your specific issue or the thing you're trying to do at the moment. So we thought we would do one of these to see what's the range of things that you guys are interested in? What can we help you with? Maybe something you're struggling with right now, or something you want to know about for the future. So go ahead and put your question in the chat. We'll try to answer it, and I'll let the other TMEs introduce themselves and see what they'd like to get out today.
Well, I'm Charlie. I've been delivering some of these webinars with Thomas as well. We're on the same TME team. Thomas actually misspoke. Don't put your questions in the chat. Put them in the Q&A.
Sorry.
That's where we want them. All right. So, yeah. Honestly, we've been doing our ICE basics for about 2 years now, and we're still, just scratching the surface of it. We want to know what you guys want to see, because as we're coming up with our ideas, we know that we're going a lot into the automation side of it. That's the future of anything as far as technology goes. But some of you might not care about that. You might want to go down this path or that path, and you have questions about that. So that's the kind of things, like Tom said, that's what we want to know. That's what we want to be able to provide for you.
Next, I'll take up. I'm Pavan Gupta. I'm also actually one of the technical marketing engineers. So I've given not many as Thomas and Charlie did the webinars, but I'm a kind of a kid in front of them, but at least I'm kind of actually learning along with you. I wanted to understand your top of the questions so that I can answer anything.
Pavan, you don't do many webinars, but when you do, you tackle the hard stuff. You do the digital certificates and you do the upgrades. So we thank you for that.
And next upcoming, I'm going to actually tackle the compliance part of it, probably the RTC, the TC next stuff. Hopefully, excellent. I'm going to cover it in the November itself.
Good.
I'm Jonathan Eaves, also TME. So you might have seen a couple of webinars I've done on policy. So that is security groups or using security group tags. So I did a basics one and an advanced one. So if there's anything on segmentation with SGTs, then let me know.
Yeah, Joff, you do it all with TrustSec, SGTs, SDA, ACI. You do it all.
Yes, in terms of policy end to end, and also, we use a couple of apps on Catalyst Center as well. You might know that as DNA Center. So Endpoint Analytics and group-based policy analytics. So any questions on them, then fire away.
I do have some questions coming in, but I want to give anybody else a chance to introduce themselves as well.
Hi, this is Jon Hamilton. I'm with the CSS team, and I've been working with ICE and ACS and NAC and all those fun things since before they were invented. So a lot of good experience. We've been working with the TME team on helping with these webinars, and hopefully we'll be able to answer all your questions today.
Yeah, and just a quick add, my name is Ayo, and Jon and I are on the same team. So again, we work along with customers a lot, helping with ICE best practices and adoption barriers. So it's always fun to be a panelist on these webinars and help the team to address our customers' concerns and questions. So it should be a good one today. We're looking forward to it.
Thank you, Jon and Ayo. It's great to have you guys here. It's always appreciate your support on these.
So the first question we got that came in from David Cass is, when will 3.3 patch 1 release? He's got a two-part question. That's the first part of his question. And since Thomas and Hsing-Tsu have been working with a lot of the development for 3.3 patch 1, I'm going to let one of you take that.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and answer that. So we are working on ICE 3.3 patch 1 right now. We're actually playing with it. We've got a really cool feature coming up for ICE and Duo integration, native in ICE. So that's really exciting to see. So that's one less thing you guys have to struggle to integrate with the Duo Network Gateway. So that's planning to come out in December. That's the latest I've heard. So look forward in that time frame. Hopefully before the end of the year.
And the second part is he wants instructions on how to allow only domain computers and domain users from Active Directory, and I think he can find that in the secure wired prescriptive deployment guide, design guide, whatever. Isn't that it a short URL, cs.co/ice-wired?
Yeah, exactly. So there's a couple of places. That is definitely one of them. I'll bring up one more. So I'll put in the ICE wired URL. Let me share it out with you all here. So this is our prescriptive deployment guide for wired. And so this has all of our authoritative docs on best practices and configurations for doing wired configs. And then there was one other one. What was the question again, Charlie? There was something else. There's another doc I was thinking of.
How to limit access to only domain computers and domain users.
Ah, right. Thank you. There's another one for ICE authentication and authorization policy reference. This is one that I kind of put together to hopefully help with what are some of the common scenarios that you may want to do. And one of them should be domain computers. So user authentication and machine authentication. So these are the two policies that I would refer you to for how to do domain-based computers. So you can see domain computers there, and you can see domain users here. And if you want to know where to access these, we have everything listed on our ICE resources page in our community. So cs.co/ice-resources. We should have all those things listed for you. So we have everything listed, getting started. And if you search for the word wired, you'll see that prescriptive wired deployment guide. And if you search for, I think, reference, authentication authorization policy reference, there it is there as well. So everything is there in this document for you.
No questions. So,
sorry.
Go ahead.
Hsing-Tsu?
I would just like to add a comment, right? In the page that Thomas says point to, there's also guide on TEAP. And that's like quite important when we try to allow domain computer and domain user, because that would check using just the same authentication in a way, right? In the same session, we check both computer and user authentication and authorization. But there's one important concept, because ICE authentication and authorization policy is the first match. And so when we try to authenticate, authorize domain computer and user, we can only use one authentication. You can only match one authentication policy and one authorization policy, unless that say authorization policy, we can actually put in like a monitor mode, and then that it can match the monitor mode and continue with whatever you match. And therefore, because I see there's some kind of misconception, like say people kind of think, oh, if I'm doing e-chaining, I can match computer using its own authorization rule, and the user using a different one. That would not be the case.
Yeah, so if you want to go through and you want to check for, user and machine both succeeding, or if you have the case where one fails and the other one succeeds, we have all these cases again in that authentication authorization document for you for doing TEAP. And this is really the preferred way to do it these days. If you want to authenticate both the machine and the users to do the TEAP chaining method, as Hsing-Tsu said.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up, Hsing-Tsu. That's a great point.
Mm-hmm.
This might be another one for Thomas and Hsing-Tsu. I'm going to take a stab at it, but I don't know if it's actually true. Is there any way to do a bulk COA? Contact with the content visibility endpoints or the live sessions, you can only do a COA on a single endpoint.
So I would
my thought-
I would probably suggest them to make use of an APIs instead of actually GUI. So from the live session, you can initiate the COA, or from the context visibility, you can raise the COA for a single endpoint. That's the capability, because when you're trying to troubleshoot or when you're facing a challenges with a certain endpoints, that's when you have an opportunity to select that endpoint and go for a COA. In case if at all you wanted to do a bulk COA, probably all the endpoints in one location, probably you wanted to actually make a toss and get them authenticated, you might have to make use of APIs instead of actually the GUI. That's what I'm going to suggest.
Pavan, I would just comment. I believe the question asked is saying, in ISE kind of visibility, we do allow people to select more than one endpoint and can attempt to do the COA, but it will only affect the first one in the list. And that's just that's how it current design.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say, is to use the bulk API to try to get this to work for you. If you want to take a look at, see what that consists of, what kind of information you need to send, Thomas is super wonderful at creating all these short URLs, and we have the cs.co/ice-API, which will also take you to the DevNet, where we have all of our ISE APIs documented, and you'll be able to see and look at those.
Yeah, and which do you guys? It's the MNT API is the one that has the COA, right?
I believe so. Yeah.
So for that, you actually have to scroll down under monitoring, and then you can take a look at the monitoring REST APIs. And there for session management, I believe this is where you actually can go in and you can do the COA. Change of authorization. If I can spell it. There it is. Change of authorization REST APIs. Okay, separate page. So here's where we have those the API calls for doing the change of authorization.
All right.
Going back to the third question, I'm going to take it up. Is the GUI upgrade from 2.7 to 3.2 a bad idea versus doing a backup and restore? I know that backup and restore is usually recommended by most ISE veterans. I have a laugh around it. Why? Because the backup and restore has advantages over the GUI way of actually upgrading it. The reason behind the GUI way of upgrading was not promising earlier, but we will keep on improving it, release by release, version by version. So that was the reason why the backup and restore was recommended so far. And because there is one more opportunity over there as well. Think about a situation where I wanted to continue with the production environment. Parallelly, I can bring up one more environment with a new version, restoring the configuration of my existing production environment there. Just location by location, nor testing wise, we can actually route all your small traffic towards the new version, test it out your configuration. Once it is smoothful, then I can actually dismantle, or I can bring down the existing production environment and make this new environment as a production one. So at any point of time, you have a decision, actually, you have a choice to fall back to the previous one or the new one. That was the reason why you have a backup and restore method was actually suggested. This is a better advantage. Coming back to the GUI way of upgrading it, as I told you, there was a challenge, of course, earlier in order for you to come down to 3.x releases. But in 3.1 and 3.2, we introduced the split and new upgrade methods in order to overcome those challenges. If you remember correctly, we have the upgrade webinar. There are 2 upgrade webinars already presented there. Upgrading your ISE deployment, that was the first webinar conducted for moving your earlier releases to the newer releases, 3.x. And we have one more webinar explicitly around our new split upgrades, which was introduced in the 3.2. That was actually talking about the new split upgrade methods. So the new split upgrade method was avoiding more and more problems. Actually, it was we are evolving as I said. So the new split upgrade method is going to actually allow you to do a new split upgrades without facing any challenges. We have a lot more pre-checks than earlier one. And we have a lot of checks available in order to download the bundle, in order to validate the bundle, create the bundle, and then post it to the new nodes. And just we are trying to actually upgrade the OS and then configuration. That's it. So the GUI upgrade, it's going to be more smoother when you are coming down to the newer versions. So if at all you were there in earlier releases, you can take an advantage of actually GUI or backup and restore method. We were recommending backup and restore earlier because the GUI upgrade has its own challenges earlier. Now with the new split upgrade process, we have all those limitations alleviated so that you can have a better GUI way of upgrading it. So, that's it.
Thank you, Pavan. Sorry it took me so long to get the slide up. I was hoping that people will be able to see that they could go to your video that we put up on YouTube about how to do this.
Great. I can post that link in the window as well.
Oh, thank you, Rigo, for posting that.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, any other questions coming up?
Well, we've got one kind of a follow-up to that. It's longer down in the list as I was scrolling through, but what is the recommended upgrade procedure for 3.1 to 3.2? Seems like it is to reimage with backup and restore. What is the experience on Web GUI or CLI upgrade? Honestly, Pavan covers all of that in this wonderful webinar. The one thing I would want to remind you to be aware of is if your 3.1 is in AWS and you want to upgrade that to 3.2, then yes, you would have to do a backup and restore, because right now the cloud-based ISE instances do not support a GUI or CLI upgrade.
And you're going to be showing us how to do that next month, right, Charlie?
I'll be showing you how to do that next month in that webinar coming up using automation.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
And I got
take a look
off as well. Oh, yeah, look at that.
There it is.
This is
A
a
question
fun
for Joff?
Yeah, there's a question for Joff. Customer has DNA Center with a central license. If we want to integrate ISE to PX Grid, what features will the customer get?
Okay, so yeah, I was busy answering that one online. The first thing is that we use PX Grid for the integration which is in Advantage license. But when ISE is connected to DNAC, then several things are shared in both directions. The first thing is automation. When network devices are discovered in Catalyst Center, that automates the network device config into ISE. We share profiling, probe information from ISE to Endpoint Analytics. We've got the use of group-based policy analytics in Catalyst Center, which helps you build your policies, and that works from sharing groups and such like from ISE. Obviously, we have all the ISE services, so we've got MDM, LDAP, AD connectivity, so that's all for use when the integration is there from DNA Center. Yeah, so there are lots of features. Obviously, ISE is the identity authentication authorization engine, and that information is shared. But obviously, DNAC, Catalyst Center, and ISE are the main engines for the solution. So yeah, that allows Catalyst Center to learn identity and context from the endpoints. So they're the benefit, or some of the benefits of interconnecting, mainly the solution together. takes the strength of Catalyst Center of automation and assurance, and it takes the strength of ISE with the backend services, the authentication and authorization, and the policy management. So I hope that answers the question.
Awesome. We have one that a lot of people have been asking about since it was first talked about and since the feature was introduced in 2.4 and then stuck with us from 2.6 all the way up now. And that's the policy export. How can we import policies into ISE? So I know that's a big one. It's already been answered through our Q&A, but I wanted to bring it up live as well because it's such a common question that we get, you know. Yes, we can export through XML, which we should probably find a better format for that, honestly, but I digress.
It's a little old, yeah.
Right. But as Thomas will tell you, in trying to import policies, even through automation and, you know, the ease of use that we have there were so many dependencies and other issues with actually pulling that policy in that it's not there, and we don't want to screw up your deployment, right? I mean, he can go further into that, but actually, yeah, I did a webinar on actually building radius policy sets. If you want to check that out, we go in depth into all kinds of different policies in that as well. But to import policies, there's just no mechanism at this point.
Yeah, and if you think about it, I mean, some people can have some really crazy complex policies. And when you go to do a restore, there's a lot of dependencies. If you think about the number of identity stores that you have, and if you think about the different authorization rules and all these different things that have to kind of be there to finally tie it all together into your authorization results, there's a lot of dependencies, I'll just say that. And so if you were to take it from one installation and put it onto another one and you just, you know, you didn't have one of those things, that can be a problem. And so that's kind of the challenges that I've seen when even doing it with the new REST APIs, right? Is you've got to have all those dependencies, make sure you have those in place first before you actually go and configure your final policy authorization rule or even authentication rule. So yeah, those are some of the challenges there. But yeah, we haven't implemented it yet. But that's wise. There's some issues with that. And then also I'll say that some people they may want to take only a few rules and import them in, and they don't want to take the entire thing. And so then creating a filter for that's another set of it's another feature that people want, but we haven't done that yet either.
Yeah,
so
that was
really
a good
at this
point
point in time. Oh, sorry, Pavan.
That was a good point. Basically, that was the reason why we don't have a holistic mechanism. We have a lot of referential objects configured in the policy set in a production environment. Even if you take a look at it in your own environment, you'll find you might be writing the policies based on the groups, identity store groups, or the endpoint policies, or you might have created the custom profiling policies. So many dependencies over there. So in order to create a rule, that's the last part of your policy creation. You might have to create these building objects in the small blocks. These small blocks, they are part of your policy, but they are supposed to be created earlier before creating even the policies. So the straightaway answer, like Charlie mentioned, there is no ability for you to actually import the policies. You can only export it through the GUI in an XML format just for a reference, but you cannot actually import it back to the another ISE. Think of it a situation like Thomas mentioned. I wanted to create an environment similar to my earlier one, or somebody might be having wanted to replicate the same kind of an environment by taking just a backup of XML file and importing it to my environment. That's not possible because that environment is not same as mine. I might be just starting with a test bed without even having an Active Directory or without having an even LDAP, etc. So how do I even import those policies into my thing? So those are the challenges that you're going to face when we were talking about when we double click on the policies export and import. So instead, we were giving a way for you to actually manage the policies over the APIs itself, the automation way. As long as you have the same kind of an environment that you need to be replicated, then the policy management from one to another is going to be possible over the API. Like Thomas mentioned, the building blocks are supposed to be created first, and then after you need to configure the policies.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up the APIs for everybody's reference, and you can just see the number of potential things that could go wrong when you do an import, right? All the dependencies when you write a profile. This is basically all the ones for device administration, and then if you go look at the ones for network access control with Radius, I mean, there's just a ton of different objects to configure, and making sure all those dependencies are met that's really the difficulty, and then trying to resolve those if one isn't there. That's why we don't have the import yet. So if you do want to do it, APIs right here are the way to do it.
There's a follow-on to that. A lot of times we get, well, then why do we have the export function? And you know what? Honestly, to be able to export your policies and rules so that you can view those offline, and maybe you're rebuilding ISE, or you want to build ISE in your pilot, your test network or whatever, to be able to do that and to kind of manipulate that and fine tune that before you actually input it into ISE, I think that gives itself a little bit of, purpose, reason. I don't know, but that's what
I'll tell you. I've seen there's an internal TAC tool that can take that XML file and parse it and make it look really pretty, so that the TAC is able to understand at a glance kind of what your policy set is without having to try and reproduce it on an ICE box in their lab. So that, I believe, is why it was originally created.
Yeah, it's one of those things that was created for a nice internal reason, but was made available to everybody just because, hey, it's a nice to have.
Yeah.
I actually want to make a correction. We did intended to have import, but it was just like a task too big and to fulfill. And so, like, yeah, the original idea is like we have export and we able to import. It's just we found we attended it, but it's like too buggy, and that's how we pull back.
Yeah, that was in the same patch that introduced us to the VM small, medium, and large licenses in 2.4. So if you were a part of the beta in that, then you were able to actually see the link and to attempt to do the import on that as well. And you saw the issues that we saw there. But that's Hsing-Tsu going into the Wayback Machine. Now, Martin has one. We're talking about nice, big overall ICE concepts here. And Martin said, the heck with that. You said, if I'm having an issue with something, ask it. So he did. He's got a nice troubleshooting question here about a posture solution with ICE. So this is one that Pavan should right off the top of his head. And if not, it might be one that we need to take offline because it's a pretty good one. So they have end users connected to an SSID and receiving a warning for untrusted sister certificate, and AnyConnect cannot find or verify the server by IP address. And the interesting thing is that they have ICE in domain A and computers in domain B. Computers have both certificates from both domains, but the error is on the IP address and not the FQDNs. And I would assume that the IP address is not one of the SAN fields. So he's asking, how can we force the computers to search for the FQDN and not IP address? And that might also be something that's in the posture module for AnyConnect. If you're putting in your IP addresses for your policy servers and not the FQDNs, that could also cause that issue. But I'm going to leave that to Pavan because he's the guy.
Yeah, so basically it depends on the configuration. We will need to actually double click on why exactly and what exactly the configuration is. See, usually we can even configure the IP address to contact the ISE from the AnyConnect using the XML file, or even you can specify the FQDN. So as long as you have an FQDN and the FQDN certificates were already in your trusted chain, the AnyConnect is not supposed to actually give you any warning. It's just an FQDN, get the resolution with an IP address and connect to the PSN, get the posture policies, and that's how it should work. If you have an FQDN already, then we might have to actually see why is it even popping up for an IP address explicitly. So we might have to actually look at the configuration and see how it goes. So in a nutshell, any connect, you don't have to actually have an IP address in order to contact the PSN. If you have configured already FQDN as a call home list as part of your non-URL redirect based discovery mechanism, it will straight away resolve it over the DNS, and then it will try to connect it over the FQDN itself, I mean the IP address itself. So if at all you have configured an IP address in the URL redirect, or if at all you have configured an IP address in the XML file, then that might be an issue that you have to actually tackle from the certificate SAN fields. You might have to imprint that IP address in the SAN field so that any connect would trust, even though it was trying to connect over the IP address rather than the FQDN. That's what I'm going to say at this point of time.
And Pavan, you did a great troubleshooting webinar that I've got up here. You did 2 parts, actually. There's so much to it. Was there anything in there that might help in this scenario?
No, this was not explicitly covered in that troubleshooting section 2. This was kind of, this was not covered as part of the second one yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
But maybe we can consider another webinar to cover the topic.
Yeah.
Yes.
I saw,
Yes.
yeah, sorry. There's a question about finding the upgrade history of existing ICE deployment, right? It's not exactly for the ICE deployment, but if you go to the COI of ICE, for each ICE node, you can do show version history, and that will actually give you that information. As for that particular node, what's the upgrade history?
And that was going to be one of the next questions. So thanks for taking that, Hsing-Tsu. One that we have that comes from a name that we all know, Gennady Yakubovich. He says, hey, sometimes it's hard to support all the ICE versions that are in flight. Are we planning to reduce the amount of supported versions or patches or retire them faster? And I think this question is out of exasperation, and I get that. But if you take a look at the cs.co/ICE-EOL page, that's where we list all of our end-of-life stuff. Gennady already knows this, but this is for everyone else. You'll see that we're actually starting to do exactly what you called out here. 3.0 has already been announced end of life, okay? 2.7 is end of life. We're supporting right now 3 versions that are not end of life. That's 3.1, 3.2, and 3.3. So next year, as Thomas is showing, 3.0 is going to be end of software maintenance on July 13th. So we're getting there, and we do have to abide by the Cisco policies on software lifecycle and all of that. But we're getting to the point where we have 3 main releases that are supported. So hopefully that helps you and gives you a little more confidence and releases some of that exasperation, Gennady.
There's one more URL, Charlie, I'll just put up since we're talking about software life cycles. We do, and this is at cs.co/ICE-lifecycle. It talks about how we do our release timelines. And so if you wonder why or how long that we keep our software up, this is the general timeline for you. So, when we first release at FCS, and then we'll make an announcement, after 1 year to let you know when it's going to be end of sale, end of maintenance, or end of software maintenance. I believe this is the last time that you're ever going to get any kind of security patches or anything like that if there's something found. And then finally, last day of support. So typically this is a 4-year process.
And the thing about it being a 4-year process is that since we're typically releasing about once a year for our versions, we're only going to be supporting 4 versions at any given time. according to this life cycle. Because as soon as the fourth one is released, we're coming up on the end of software maintenance for the fourth one behind, So we're getting into that good cycle now.
Yeah. So if anybody wants to know, this is, talks about the period of 4 years, the life cycle. And then I don't think there's anything mentioned about patches specifically in here. We don't have an official policy on how often patches come out or if there's any cadence. There's usually a lot of different factors that go into when a patch comes out based on any critical bugs that have come out, things that we want to push out for a particular release. Sometimes we put features in patches, and so there's just a lot of different things that go into patches. So we don't have a consistent hard date or period of time that we do between patches per release.
Another one that comes up on the topic of TEAP. People ask this a lot of times, and I see that John's already posted a link to answer the question, but since it is, again, another common question is there a way to push out the TEAP settings using Microsoft GPO? And there is a knowledge base article, TEAP for Windows 10 using group policy, and that covers that. And knowledge base articles are typically written by our TAC team or engineers with direct knowledge of this and have tested over and over again. So that's one of the good things to use there.
And I'm going to our ISE Guides page, and you see I just added a little hashtag TEAP to the end, and it jumped right down to that section where you can see that article that Charlie was just referring to. There's a few other protocols in there too if you guys are looking for it, but they're all EAP-based protocols.
Yeah, and what I want to do as we're starting to wrap up this Q&A session is I want Thomas to go through this whole ISE Guides page with you and explain how you can actually use this as a sort of database for all the knowledge that you want, because he's really built this out with his tags and everything that is splendid. So we'll talk about that a little bit later in the session as well. All right, so if there was Adam Hollifield, I've never heard that name before. If there is a CSR on an ISE node awaiting to bind, is that CSR cleared if that node is inline upgraded, or does the CSR and private key remain? That's a lot of wrappers there. Thanks for giving us this onion.
So I think, if you create a CSR, it's sitting there in your ISE node, and then you don't actually bind it to a cert, and you just go ahead and upgrade. I think that's the question, right?
Right.
I have no idea. When you upgrade, it should still be there, but Pavan, you're the digital certificate guru. I'm going to pass this off to you.
I never tried that kind of a scenario, to be honest with you. To be honest, it's part of the configuration. Obviously, the CSR is supposed to be there. That's what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
But keep in mind, the CSR, when you're trying to generate, even though we were trying to give you capability to generate the CSR for any of the node, the backup, you're going to take it from the PPAN itself. When you try to restore, you're not trying, if at all you're trying to restore on a, let's say, we have a lot of scenarios in the restore method. Take an example of your appliance itself actually got corrupted, and you wanted to reimage it, and you're trying to restore it on the same node. That's when you have an opportunity to have all the nodes, and it will automatically get populated in your deployment. But think about a situation another. You took the backup from one environment and you're trying to restore it on another environment. So obviously the certificates and the CSRs you might have generated for other nodes. Those nodes are not part of your new restoring configuration. So that's where you're going to lose that CSR, if at all it's not visible. So think in these lines. Configuration backup is going to be taken from one deployment, and if you're trying to restore it on another deployment, all your secondary nodes, part of your earlier deployment, are not part of actually the new one. So obviously the CSR might not, even if it is there, it might not even work.
So here's the follow-up question on changing time zones and everything. The question is, are different time zones in the same deployment supported? Supported, yes. Encouraged, no. Because it wreaks havoc on your logs. It wreaks havoc on everything, and it can actually lead to issues. I'll just say.
Well, your logs basically have timestamps that are localized versus standardized on UTC or some other time zone, and then your logs just basically get intermixed at wrong times. That's the problem.
We recommended like different regions if you want to do multi-deployment, if you're really wanting different time zones.
Yeah, if you just want a single deployment, choose the time zone that you're going to be accessing it from the most, or use UTC and have it generalized. Those are the two recommendations I always give out. Hey, if your admin is in North Carolina, use America/New York for your time zone. If your admins span different time zones, use UTC, and everybody knows how to calculate that, and it's pretty simple.
And everybody has the same pane shared when they go to calculate the offsets of their logs.
Yeah. Right. I would like to go back to the question about the CSR. So I think there's a point is saying when we just generate CSR, we cannot export the private key out. And therefore, like say if it takes time to get the certificate signed and somehow we lose it, and the certificate signed, we cannot really bind it, right? So I would recommend, like say, if you're going to have a public CA to sign and it takes time, you can have another CA just like sign it, you bind it, and this way you can export out the private key. And so later on, once if it's after upgrade, we able to get the certificate, and then we have the key and certificate pair, and we can import it back.
See, it always takes one of us to think out of the box to get to the actual answer.
So back in the day, we have alpha. I remember that was like one of the case we run into is we because that time when we tried to get the certificate signed, it did take time, and we lost the CSR. And so we actually have to do it over again. Go through the approval, things like that.
So the next question we have is one, I know Thomas has been getting this a lot since 3.2 was released. Well, 3.2 patch 1 and 3.3 have been released anyway. Does the AI/ML, the artificial intelligence or machine learning profiling in ISE, effectively replace Cisco Endpoint Analytics? The answer is emphatically no.
Yeah, not yet.
It's one part of what Endpoint Analytics is. Now, having been a part of the team who has built that, Joff has the most definitive answers and all the information you want on all of that. So I'm going to defer that to him.
You're hoping. Okay. So I've put an answer in there. Yeah. So Endpoint Analytics has been doing sort of next-gen profiling for a while and includes certain functions that are not supported on ISE. So IP reputation from Talos is supported, as well as detecting open ports and weak credentials. I think the main thing right now is that Endpoint Analytics uses profiling from deep packet inspection, which is sent up from the Cat9Ks. So telemetry from that is used in profiling, and all those functions are not available in ISE. Now, it doesn't mean to say they may not in the future. Things can move in a number of different directions, but that is the truth today. So there are many functions on Endpoint Analytics which is not supported on ISE today.
Which is not to say that the AI ML feature is not worth using in ICE. It's actually really great. I like it a lot, and it does a great job of condensing and combining your profiles that way. Yeah, so Thomas actually sat down with the product manager for the AI ML, Matt Gordon, and he had a kind of interview style type of a webinar about that, and it was great. So go ahead and check this out to get more information and a deeper understanding of what exactly ICE can do with it.
Any other new questions coming in?
I'm looking. Oh, here's one that I've been getting a lot lately.
Okay.
2.2 shows all the details in Grafana. What he means is the details about the host machine, RAM, CPU, all of that stuff, disk size, disk space, I/O, all that. Do we have an option to export this information and show it in a different Grafana? So to export from Grafana itself, no, that is not there, and there's no way to export using the Prometheus either. What I have been telling people, and I've just started the path toward getting Splunk so I can test this out myself, is use the Data Connect feature. Get everything that you want to from the ICE database, because we get a lot of the information from Prometheus or for Prometheus from that as well. So take all of that, see what it dumps into Splunk, and see if you can take that and make it a Prometheus readable format, in which case you can then import that into your own Grafana that's outside of ICE. Because a lot of people don't want to go inside and have an embedded Grafana. Now that, we have Grafana capability in ICE, let's use it, but they already have the Grafana servers. They want that single point of glass type of aspect to it. So that would be my recommendation, and that's something I'm getting set up to be able to test out here pretty soon as well. So I've had this question quite a bit lately.
Charlie, didn't you do that in your load balancing webinar? You showed something like that with traffic?
So I did not export out of ICE. What I did is I used a different data connector to take my Prometheus logs from the traffic load balancer and put those into ICE. So with Grafana, you can still add a data source, but you can't output it. Now with the Elk Stack, the log analytics, you cannot add another data source. So Grafana is the only one that will allow you to add an external data source to it.
Okay. And we had another one of our CX colleagues deliver a webinar on the next generation telemetry that was being asked about with all this Grafana and Elk stuff. So if you're not familiar with it, take a look at Emmanuel Cano's. He did 2 webinars, actually. There was just too much content for only a single webinar. So we did 2 of them on the next generation ICE telemetry monitoring and custom reporting, which goes over these concepts.
Yeah, so these are some of the exciting features that for me made 3.2 a must have. I mean, if you're even thinking about upgrading to anything, you're still on 2.7, you're on 3.1, whatever. 3.2 should be where you go. I know it's finally the suggested release, but we were telling people way before it was a suggested release, go there just for these features because they're that great. So Bo asks, how many network devices do small ICE deployments manage through TACACS? He's been given the ICE scale link, so the performance and scale link, and that should answer some of those questions, but I'm not sure if it talks about the total number of TACACS devices within a small deployment.
So it's basically like this. People often actually get confused with this, the number of network devices that is going to be supported with the TACACS authentications. Look at from this point of view. If you have 1,000 network devices, how often actually you're trying to log in? Do you have any automation? Do you have network administrator login in per second or something? That is what actually you have to gauge, and then have number of PSNs or a TACACS nodes deployed. That's how you are supposed to actually look at from the TACACS deployment. So the number of TACACS authentications supported by per PSN is what you're supposed to look at. It's not the number of network devices that you have. Even though you have 1,000 network devices, how often you are trying to log in? That is what actually the case you're supposed to. That was the reason why we have not based on the number of network devices licenses. It's based on the number of TACACS nodes that you're making use of.
And I'll just mention that our colleague Emmanuel Cano also did a device administration webinar 2 days ago. So, Bo, you just missed on that one. So hopefully you saw that one. But Emmanuel did a great job talking about TACACS, how that works. And yeah, one of the big considerations, like Pavan said, is, is it a human typing commands at human speed, or is it a machine just like spewing commands to thousands of different network devices at the same time? So I've heard some very large customers are doing lots of automated validations of their configs, making sure nothing changed. It's exactly what they put into their GitHub automation repository, things like that. And it's just hammering those devices and ISE all the time. So it really just depends on that level of automation that you have.
And if you did miss the webinar, it will be posted at that link shown on this page. It'll also be posted on our YouTube channel probably next week.
Yeah, I have to have the ISE webinars link up on there because we don't have the YouTube link for it yet. It's too new.
Right.
Yeah,
we'll get it next week for you.
Follow up on that, as somebody was asking the same kind of a question or same context. Hello, is it possible to log every commands entered on a switch with the TACACS LiveLogs? Not only filed commands. For example, I want to be able to see every command I entered on a switch in the TACACS LiveLog in case of an incident. Okay, so this comes as part of actually command accounting. What you see in the TACACS LiveLog is authentication and an authorization. What you don't see under LiveLog, TACACS LiveLog, is command accounting. For command accounting, you can go to the reports. There is under a device administration section, you have a command accounting report. That's where you're going to see the failed commands executed on the network device and even successful commands executed. That was already covered as part of the device administration just 2 days ago.
Here's another one for device admin. Is it possible to log every command entered on a switch with TACACS LiveLogs, and not only failed commands? So we do have a report for command accounting, or not command auditing.
That is what I'm saying.
So that will show you all the commands that have been run on your devices, except your show commands, because those aren't actually, they don't leave the switch. Those are all local to the switch or whatever network device you're on. So all show commands are still not going to be audited. You can put together policies within ISE that say this person cannot run show commands, but really those are the ones that are the least harmful. So that doesn't matter. And if somebody does a search like interface gigabit 101 and then question mark, that's not shown either, because that's just a query on how do I use this command. So different things like that won't be shown, but the meaningful commands, the ones that are actually doing something to your switch, will be in the command audit for your device admin reports.
I think just a correction, it will be shown, the show running configuration as well. So as long as you are running, it's basically, look at this way. You're trying to log into the network device and you're trying to give the authorization privileges. What are the commands that you're going to execute? Is this command even allowed from the ISE standpoint at the point of authentication authorization? So even show commands or configured commands, whatever the commands that you're going to execute on the TACACS or the network device, it's going to show up in the command accounting report.
So we've got a couple minutes left here. I want Thomas to go ahead and give a tutorial on his ISE Guides. Sorry to
All
put
right.
you on the spot like that. We hadn't talked about this before or anything.
No, that's okay. No, it's a good. So hopefully, everybody has seen this document before. So in case you didn't know, we put a lot of our documents here in the ICE community because it really makes it easy to edit these documents and keep them up to date for you. And so if you want to know how to get here, it's basically this link, the cs.co/ICE-guides. And what we've done is using the magic of HTML anchor tags, we're able to create all of these different tags in here. And so if you're looking for something specific, so, TEAP has come up several times today. So you can see there's this TEAP tag. So if you just click on that, it'll jump you right down to the part about TEAP. So there's things like that you can do. We talk about all of our different integrations that we do with various networking device vendors, our security partners, different Cisco secure products, all these different things. So whatever you're looking for, we probably have a tag for it. And all you got to do is just go up to the end here and you can see I still have my TEAP at the end. And so one of the other things that's come up today is certificates. And so if I just put the word certificates at the end, of course it doesn't jump down. How about certificate? No, how about certs? So see, I gotta improve my search here. Certs works. All right, there we go. So we have these different keywords that you can just put at the end of that URL with a hashtag. So if there's ever something you're looking for, in fact, you've probably seen it in our URLs that we post in a lot of our webinar answers. We just put cs.co ICE-guides hashtag whatever it is, and it jumps you right to it. So that's why we do it, because there is so much information about ICE that it really requires a guide like this with all the different things, all the different integration guides and things to pull everything together with all the different scenarios you all have. So that's what this is about, is hopefully that'll do that for you. And then what I'm starting to do now is kind of combine the ICE resources with the ICE guides. So the ICE guides has usually been about integration guides, but I'm finding that there's just so many different features and things, and having it one place, not the other, is really inconvenient. So I'm actually going to try to merge those two things together. So be looking for that change soon. Hopefully everything will just magically work. I'll redirect from one page to the other. Everything should just work for you when you do that. But I'm trying to put things together. Like, we've been talking a lot about log analytics today because it is such a great feature, like Charlie said. And being able to do that in operations, that's a really big deal. And so how do we combine operations not only within ICE, but across maybe other SIM products, right? So if you, obviously Cisco and Splunk, happy together, but it's not something new. We've actually been working with Splunk for years. We actually have all these different plugins and things that you can use for Splunk. So, maybe tying that in with operations, is another way we can start tagging stuff for you. So that's what this is all about. Hopefully you've seen this. If not, definitely bookmark it, and it will be one of your new favorite resources.
Yeah, I use it daily, so I appreciate it. That's why I was so insistent on you showing everybody, because it's super useful.
Yeah, Thomas, why don't you show the ICE resources as well?
Yeah. And then, so the ICE resources up here. So again, try to categorize this by these different things. So if you think about, if you're just getting started, maybe you're trying to design your access control system, how would you deploy it? And then how would you integrate it with different things? Or just how do you continue your learning with ICE? And obviously the webinars we're doing today, that's a big part of it. So if I click down on Learn, you can see we have an actual ICE training page, our YouTube channel, the webinars, and then I try to list out all of the webinars that we've done recently. So, once you get to one of these pages, if rather than just the keyword in that hashtag like I was doing, if you just type in something that you're looking for, so let's try certs again on this one. I'm just going to type in the word cert. There's Pavan's digital certificate administration webinar that he did. And if I just so you can see I put it under operations. There's several documents on certificate administration, and I can just so that's all we have on this page for it. But if I go to the other one, there's a whole section on PKI. So it just depends on what you're looking for, what you're trying to do. And then the other thing that I've done is I try to organize things. Sometimes finding the right Cisco doc can be difficult. So whether you're looking to download the software and use it, looking for the release notes, the compatibility guides, admin guides, install guides, all the different guides, right? Try to keep them all right here, really succinct, so you don't have to go searching the normal Cisco.com site for them. It's all right there for you. And I don't know whether, and then we do have sections for deployment. So depending upon what you're trying to do, if you're doing device admin, wireless, you just want to get some basic visibility, you want to deploy on wired switches, you want to do VPN, BYOD, segmentation, right? All these different things. We try to break it down by the different scenarios of things that you might want to be doing, and all the relevant guides or pages for those things. So go ahead and take a look through there, and hopefully you're going to find what you need. Any other questions coming in?
Control F is very powerful on every web page. So if you're reading a guide, like the prescriptive deployment guide, that's a huge guide, and you're worried, you're curious about a single thing. Control F, search, find what you need. You're at where you need to go. So that's another. That's not an ICE tip. That's a world tip. It spans across everything you want to do.
Yeah. In fact, I often I'm surprised at how many people don't use internet search engines when it comes to ICE topics. They just somehow they forget, and they just ask questions in the community without actually trying it. And I'm like, really? You didn't even try? Because we have all this stuff publicly available, all these guides we've written, so that if you just go to your internet search bar, type ICE and 3 or 4 other keywords, I've actually told our partners when I train them, if you don't get something from our community in the top 5 hits of your internet search engine, I will pay you money right now. It used to be $5 in the past, but I think with inflation, there should probably be up to about $10 or 10 euros or something. But I mean, that's how confident I am that you're going to find what you're looking for if you do an internet search.
Adam's already typing.
I bet he is. Yeah. He's gonna search some.
He won't get paid.
He won't get paid. All right. Any others?
We're actually 5 minutes past the hour, but
are we really? Wow, that went fast.
It did. It went real fast.